manufacturing. All that trade supports a lot more than 3 million nationwide from all the states that ship through the port. But it also depends on a clear understanding of things like wait times at ports to process goods coming into the country.
And if the delay is a matter of hours, that's one thing. If the delay becomes days, then that gets to be more difficult.
That's former Harris County Judge Ed Emmett, now a fellow in transportation policy at Rice University's Baker Institute. Emmett says customs officials are still coming into work.
Like the air traffic controllers, though, they won't be getting paid. So at some point, that could get to be an issue.
If those customs officials start calling in sick, it will mean longer delays for processing imported goods, and that costs money. Emmett says even before the shutdown, wait times at the Port of Houston were growing longer.
That was because of the constantly changing tariffs and the confusion over, what products need to be treated how by the customs officials in this country.
The on-again, off-again nature of tariffs under the Trump administration makes matters more complicated for Texas companies depending on imports, especially from China. Some regional companies are already seeing the effects, and they're being forced to rethink or delay major investments. Chad Burke is president and CEO of the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region.
A specific example would be a gasket company that's a member of ours that is looking to do some expansion. Well, their input costs of raw materials doubled in a very short time.
In fact, Texas is especially vulnerable to the whipsaw effect of tariffs and the government shutdown, according to Justin Thiel of the Pew Charitable Trust's Fiscal 50 project.
Texas is more trade exposed than the national trend. And that matters because many of the industries that the state relies on for revenue, like energy and manufacturing and chemicals, they all rely on imported materials and equipment.
But imports are only half the equation. Houston is also a leading departure point for exports. And if the U.S. slaps tariffs on other countries' trade goods, those countries can respond in kind. Again, Chad Burke.
Depending on where those are going and what those tariffs are, companies in other countries begin to do the same thing that we see from our own companies here that are importing goods from China.
Or they can stop buying American goods altogether. Case in point, China has stopped buying liquefied natural gas exports from the U.S. in response to the tariffs. That's bad news for Texas, which is the country's second largest exporter of LNG after Louisiana. Margaret Kidd, president of the Houston Maritime Center and Museum, says those hits to exports and imports will wind up affecting real people.
As we see container traffic decline, that's going to impact dock workers and truck drivers and warehouse workers. So, anyone that touches freight is going to be hurt. And at some point, you'll see lost jobs.
A group of U.S. small businesses is suing to challenge the legality of Trump's tariffs. The U.S. Supreme Court will begin hearing arguments in the case in November. I'm Andrew Schneider in Houston.
Grand Rising. It's morning time. It's about 9:40 a.m. And I had to go to Home Depot and grab some stuff, run my little errands this morning, and get back home. And I've done that. And as you can see, I'm always listening to talk radio. On talk radio, as you heard, the Democrats have shut the government down and continue to shut the government down. And as you heard on talk radio, they're saying this is the longest period of the government being shut down by a political party. And what they were talking about was the Port of Houston, where a lot of our goods come in to the country, and how some of the port workers are not getting paid because of the Democratic Party shutdown of the government, and how the tariffs, the Trump war tariffs, what they were talking about also, the Trump war tariffs, which they were kind of inaccurate. inaccurate on the Trump war tariffs. They wasn't giving both sides of the story. But this is, PBS is a Democratic radio station. You gotta realize that it's Democratic, so they're always gonna go against Trump, even when they're wrong. So it is what it is. But they're talking about tariffs and how tariffs were going to impact the U.S. economy, which they are actually wrong. Because if you look at the stock market, and we've been in this tariffs for, I think, for what, 3-4 months now, and there's not a shortage of anything right now. So they were wrong on that. So it's good to listen to the news channels, whether it's a talk radio or TV news. But a lot of times you got to realize a lot of these news stations are biased, depending on whether they are Democrat or whether they are Republican. So you have to look at that too. So when you're listening to the news. But that's my talk radio airing for today. They're talking about the port of Houston, where a lot of our goods come into, and how a lot of, I guess, port people are not being paid, but they're still coming to work because of the Democratic Party continues to shut the government down. And they're saying that on talk radio, they're saying this is the longest time that the government has ever been shut down. It's over 3 weeks now. Over 3 weeks. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. The stock market is actually doing pretty good. It's doing okay with the tariffs and the government shutdown. So to me, it is what it is. It's more of a political thing now. The Democrats are upset and mad at the president and the Republicans. It is what it is, y'all. Y'all have a nice Friday. Enjoy the day. Drink some tea. Find your chi.